feared for his life. He just from childhood, you know, growing up, seen me harassed before. He ran. He didn't even get 4 feet away when Hector Saavedra shot him multiple times in the back.
His ribs by these deputies, you know, before falling to his knees where he was shot at 16 times.
It was just like bam, 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 like continuous shot.
If you think the Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, or any of the worst gangs you can think of are the most dangerous gangs in America, you're in for a surprise. Believe it or not, there are gangs even more violent and brutal, and the shocking part is that they come from the police department. Since the 1970s, there have been at least 18 gangs within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, LASD. These subgroups have their own tattoos, hand signals, and rituals just like any criminal street gang. They continue to terrorize and even murder community members to this day.
To me, they're punks. The people that my son.
They use excessive force on citizens and intimidate fellow deputies who don't go along with their practices.
We have dead rats in front of people's homes.
Now, the journalist who brought this all to light is Cerise Castle. Her journey into this dark side of the police force started with the George Floyd case in 2020. She was working for a local radio station in Los Angeles covering the protests that were happening around the world. While she was out taking photos of the protesters, 2 cars filled with police officers in riot gear arrived at the scene and began shooting people with less lethal munitions.
I was out covering the George Floyd rallies that were happening across the country, across the world. And while I was doing that, 2 cars with police officers on them in riot gear rolled into the area where people had gathered.
Despite identifying herself as press, Cerise was still shot, resulting in injuries that landed her in the hospital.
So I identified myself as press. I was shot, and the resulting injuries landed me in the hospital.
While she was bedridden, Cerise started digging into the history of these gangs within the sheriff's department, and what she found was shocking. The existence of these police gangs date back at least 50 years. So yeah, it's real.
I started researching the history of the gangs in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I found out that this dates back at least 50 years.
Now, starting off the list of these notorious deputy gangs within the LASD is a group called the Banditos, known for their operations out of the East Los Angeles station. This group is not your average bunch of law enforcers. They've got a whole different vibe going on. Members of the Banditos can be recognized by a unique tattoo each of them sports on their leg. Picture this, a tattoo depicting a skeleton with a prominent mustache, decked out in a sombrero and bandolier, brandishing a pistol. This isn't just any tattoo. It's subsequently numbered, marking each member distinctly within their ranks. The Banditos aren't just a club. They operate with all the trappings of a traditional street gang. They use nicknames or monikers for each other and even have a specific style they rock when off duty. And yes, they speak in gang slang too. Senior members are referred to as OGs, and they talk about getting the lowdown as if they were still on the yard, a phrase straight out of the prison gang handbook. Leadership within the Banditos is serious business. The ones in charge call themselves shot callers, a term that screams authority and is borrowed straight from the leaders of prison gangs. It's these shot callers who orchestrate the group's activities, especially when it comes to recruitment. They target young Latino deputies, bringing them in as prospects. These prospects are not just members in training. They act as enforcers, following the shot caller's commands to the letter. If any deputy dares to resist this forced recruitment, the gang tries to push them out, making them quit the East LA station, or as they put it, roll out. The Banditos also have their own twisted version of taxing, reminiscent of how traditional criminal gangs extort money from drug dealers on their turf. But instead of money, the Banditos' currency is favors. They make the trainees cough up for expensive meals, alcohol, and even personal gifts. And it gets darker. For female trainees, this tax sometimes comes with the grotesque expectation of favors. Women who stand up to this are met with retaliation for not going along with the program. Like their street gang counterparts, some Banditos don't shy away from violence to assert their dominance or deal with perceived threats. There have been instances where deputies were physically assaulted by Banditos members, right behind the East LA station, near the Cap nightclub, or during off-training parties. A particularly brutal episode occurred at an off-training party at Kennedy Hall on September 28, 2018. Witnesses reported that 4 veteran deputies affiliated affiliated with the Banditos launched a coordinated attack on several unaffiliated deputies, particularly targeting those whom the Banditos didn't approve of at their station. The assault was so severe that 2 victims needed hospitalization. The aftermath was chilling. Those who reported the Kennedy Hall incident faced further vicious backlash from the Banditos, including finding dead rats placed in front of their homes. A morbid warning to stay silent. Even a female deputy who spoke out against the Banditos and filed a lawsuit found a dead rat outside her car, a stark reminder of the risks faced by those who dare to challenge the gang's authority. Next up on the list is the Buffalo Soldiers, a subgroup within the LA County Sheriff's Department that was unique in its composition, being made up entirely of African-American deputies. The term Buffalo Soldier historically referred to African-American soldiers in the U.S. Army, who served in segregated units under white officers from the period after the Civil War up until the military was fully racially integrated at the end of the Korean War. While the Buffalo Soldiers within the LASD have occasionally been mentioned in articles, detailed information about this group is scarce. According to one source from within the LASD, the Buffalo Soldiers formed in response to the prejudice they faced at the Century Station. This subgroup came into the existence after Sheriff Lee Baca transferred 9 African-American deputies to the Century Station in '99. This move was intended to diversify the station and improve relations within the community. However, some deputies at the station who were resistant to this change derogatorily referred to these new deputies as Buffalo Soldiers. Instead of rejecting the label, these African-American deputies embraced it and made it their own. Despite this background, some commentators on social media who claim to be current or former LASD members have likened the Buffalo Soldiers to other notorious subgroups within the department. They suggest that the Buffalo Soldiers might be engaging in similar gang-like behaviors. However, there is no concrete evidence to support these claims. Unlike the more infamous groups like the Banditos, there is no objective proof that the Buffalo Soldiers were involved in activities that could classify them as a deputy gang or clique. Next up is the Cavemen. This deputy clique was based at the East LA station in Boyle Heights. Members of the Cavemen sport a common tattoo that features a cartoon caveman, similar to the logo on a mug seen in some photos. For many years, there was even a Cavemen mural on a wall in the conference room of the East LA station. However, this mural was eventually covered up as the Banditos gang gained more popularity and influence within the station. Sheriff Alex Villanueva has publicly acknowledged the existence of the Cavemen, mentioning that he was aware of them during his time at the East Los Angeles station. However, he made it clear that he was never a member of this clique. The Cavemen, like other deputy cliques, had their own symbols and rituals, but their influence waned as other groups like the Banditos rose to prominence. Next on the list are the Cowboys. This deputy clique operates out of multiple locations, including the Century and Palmdale stations. Cowboys members have a distinct tattoo on their leg, which is sequentially numbered. The tattoo features a skull wearing a cowboy hat. In 2018, a deputy named Oleg Poliski testified about his experience with the Cowboys at the Palmdale station. He received his Cowboys tattoo while accompanied by several other deputies and was celebrated at a gathering of at least 20 deputies, many of whom also had the same tattoo. Poliski claimed that the Cowboys tattoo represented the idea that no person has fewer rights than any other person, and that it symbolized treating the public equally and without bias. Next up is the Executioners, a deputy gang that operates out of the Compton station. Members of the Executioners can be identified by a distinctive tattoo on their leg, which is sequentially numbered. The tattoo depicts a skull wearing a Nazi helmet with CPT on the front and a rifle encircled by flames. This gang's reputation is notorious, and their actions have brought a lot of heat onto the LASD. One of the most infamous incidents involving the Executioners occurred on August 25, 2016. Samuel Aldama, a sheriff's deputy from the Compton station who had an Executioner's tattoo, and his partner fatally shot Donta Taylor, an African-American man walking on the sidewalk dressed in red. Both deputies claimed they saw a gun in Taylor's waistband, but no gun was ever found. Taylor's family filed a civil rights lawsuit alleging that the deputies used excessive force unconstitutionally. During a deposition on May 16, 2018, Aldama admitted that he harbored ill will against African Americans, although he quickly backtracked, claiming he didn't understand the question. Aldama also revealed that he got his Executioner's tattoo 2 months before the shooting and that up to 20 other deputies had the same tattoo. When a judge ordered the disclosure disclosure of other deputies with matching executioner's tattoos, the county settled the lawsuit for $7 million. The plaintiff's attorney believed the large settlement was an attempt to avoid releasing the names of more executioner's members. Ostroberto Gonzalez, a deputy at the Compton station, provided further insight into the gang's operations in a recent deposition. He described the executioners as a violent gang that dominates the station and has assaulted other deputies. The executioners do not admit African Americans or women into their ranks. According to Gonzalez, the executioners would celebrate at bars, events referred to as 998 parties or 998 debriefs, after a deputy shot someone. The deputy involved in the shooting would then receive an executioner's tattoo as a mark of their deed. The path to becoming an executioner is intense and dangerous. Deputies aspiring to join the gang are known as prospects. These prospects have to chase ink by becoming extremely aggressive on the streets to prove they are worthy of wearing the executioner's tattoo. This often involves escalating situations unnecessarily to show off their toughness. In some cases, both prospects and fully inked members have been known to file false reports, claiming they saw someone with a gun as a pretext for arresting or using force against a suspect. These fabricated reports are known as ghost run reports. Next up is the Grim Reapers, sometimes just called the Reapers. This deputy gang originally operated out of the Lenox station before it closed in 2010 and now continues its activities from the South LA station. Members of the Grim Reapers have a distinct tattoo on their leg, sequentially numbered, depicting a black hooded skeleton holding a scythe, a symbol reminiscent of the medieval figure of death. The Grim Reapers have been linked to multiple deputy shootings. For instance, David Chavez, a deputy at the South Los Angeles station with a Grim Reaper's tattoo, has been involved in at least 2 fatal shootings. During a deposition, Chavez admitted that the Reaper is indeed a symbol of death, but he insisted that his tattoo represents station pride, not participation in shootings. In the same lawsuit, other deputies with Reaper tattoos like Juan Meza and Lawrence Swanson, who have each been involved in multiple shootings, were also identified. The Grim Reapers gained increased public attention after Sheriff Villanueva reinstated Karen Carl Mandoyan, a former deputy with a Grim Reaper tattoo. Mandoyan had been fired by the previous administration in 2016 for committing acts of domestic violence against a female deputy, stalking her, attempting to break into her apartment, and lying about his actions. The victim testified that Mandoyan used his status as a Reaper to try to intimidate her into not reporting the offense, boasting that his connections within the gang could ruin careers in the department. Mandoyan had also been involved in 2 non-fatal shootings in 2013 and 2015, and he received his Reaper tattoo in 2013. The situation took a darker turn when the Office of Inspector General, OIG, began investigating Villanueva's decision to rehire Mandoyan and his ties to the Grim Reapers. In response, the LASD restricted the OIG's electronic access to internal personnel records, hindering this investigation and any future probes into alleged deputy misconduct. Next, let's talk about the Jumpout Boys. This deputy gang operated out of the Operation Safe Streets Bureau's Specialized Gang Suppression Unit, known as the Gang Enforcement Team, GET. Members of the Jumpout Boys have a unique tattoo on their right ankle, sequentially numbered, depicting a red-eyed skull wearing a bandana with the letters OSS. The tattoo also includes a revolver next to an ace of spades and an 8 of spades, known as the dead man's hand in poker. In 2012, LASD management got hold of a pamphlet that detailed the creed, mission, initiation rites, and the meaning behind the Jumpout Boys tattoo. The pamphlet boldly stated, "We are not afraid to get our hands dirty without any disgrace, dishonor, or hesitation." It elaborated that members understand when they need to cross the line and then step back, emphasizing that sometimes they must do things they don't want to achieve their goals. The pamphlet also mentioned a black book that keeps all member information and dates of shootings, which is kept off-site to avoid detection. Next up is the Little Red Devils, or just Red Devils, one of the oldest known deputy cliques within the LASD. This gang dates back to the East LA station as far back as 1970. Members of the Little Red Devils have a common tattoo on their left calf, which is sequentially numbered. The tattoo features a little red devil, a symbol that marks their membership. In 1973, the existence of the Little Red Devils came to light when LASD management investigated alleged misconduct by 2 deputies affiliated with the clique. Captain R.D. Campbell led the investigation and compiled a list of all known Little Red Devils members, totaling 47. However, it's unclear if any disciplinary actions were taken against them. The rise of the Little Red Devils coincided with the East LA station adopting the controversial Fort Apache seal as its unofficial station logo. This logo is widely seen as a celebration of police violence against war protesters during the 1970 Chicano moratorium, a period of intense civil unrest. Following the Red Devils, we have the Pirates, a deputy clique based in the Firestone Firestone Station, which closed in 1993. Pirates members sport a tattoo on their leg depicting a traditional skull and crossbones, an ancient symbol of death that originally appeared on the Jolly Roger flags flown by pirates. Over time, as piracy declined, the skull and bones symbol was adopted by various military units and secret societies to signify the group's ferocity and willingness to use deadly force. Then there's the Posse, a deputy gang that operated within the mental health ward of the Los Angeles Twin Towers Correctional Facility. It's unknown if Posse members had a common tattoo, but their presence was heavily felt. The Posse resisted reforms aimed at treating inmates with severe mental illness more humanely, reforms that were introduced by LASD management to avert potential enforcement action by the US Department of Justice. Members of the Posse allegedly used coded communications to mobilize quickly within the jail. On August 1, 1998, the Posse's brutality came to a tragic end when Danny Smith, an African-American inmate with mental illness, was beaten to death by deputies in the Twin Towers. Initially, LASD officials claimed that Smith had freed himself from his handcuffs, but they later conceded that he died while still in cuffs. Just 9 days later, on August 10, 1998, 8 Posse members severely beat another mentally ill inmate, leaving him with flashlight marks on his back and boot prints on his side. Sheriff Sherman Block fired these 8 deputies and publicly acknowledged the existence of the Posse, condemning their actions by stating, quote, "There are some people in the system who think we are coddling inmates, and by God, they're going to set up their own brand of punishment." Despite these firings, other Posse members remained working in the jail. The United States Commission on Civil Rights, in a significant 1999 report on policing in Los Angeles, took note of the Posse's violent behavior, particularly their targeting of inmates with mental illnesses. Next up is the Rattlesnakes, a deputy gang that operates out of the Palmdale and Lancaster stations in the Antelope Valley. Members of the Rattlesnakes share a common tattoo featuring a skull and a snake, although it's unclear if these tattoos are sequentially numbered. In 2013, the US Department of Justice, DOJ, issued a damning report highlighting that deputies in these stations engaged in a pattern of discriminatory and unlawful practices. These included unreasonable searches and seizures, as well as the use of excessive force, violating the 4th and 14th Amendments, as well as Title VI. The DOJ also found that these deputies discriminated against African Americans living in federally subsidized housing, violating their Fair Housing Act. The report noted that some Antelope Valley deputies wore tattoos or carried paraphernalia with an intimidating skull and snake symbol, marking their affiliation with the stations. While the exact meaning of these tattoos varied, they undeniably represented a significant divide between the deputies and the community they were supposed to serve. This visual symbol was a stark reminder of the LASD's history of problematic behavior among its ranks. Following the Rattlesnakes, we have the Regulators, a deputy gang based at the Century Station in Linwood. The term Regulators is slang for individuals who handle problematic people through violence. Members of this clique have a common, sequentially numbered tattoo on their leg. Early descriptions of the Regulators' tattoo depict a skull-faced man holding a shotgun with flames shooting from its barrels. Later reports from the district attorney's office describe a similar station tattoo as a skeleton in a cowboy hat and trench coat holding a double-barreled shotgun with smoke coming from the barrels. This skeleton figure is set against a backdrop of flames and holds a memorial stone engraved with CEN and XXI, referring to the Century Station, which was established in 1994 after merging the Linwood and Firestone stations. Next, let's talk about the Spartans, a deputy clique also operating out of the Century Station. In ancient Greece, Sparta was known for its militaristic society, warrior culture, and emphasis on secrecy, often prioritizing the state's needs over individual rights. The Spartans' ethos has been adopted by various groups, including white nationalists and gun rights advocates who admire Sparta's values and symbols. There is not much public information about the Spartans within the LASD. During former Sheriff McDonald's tenure, LASD leadership launched an investigation into the Spartans after a mass email was signed SFFS, believed to stand for Spartans Forever, Forever Spartans. In 2019, reports surfaced that the FBI had opened an investigation into several LASD deputy gangs, including the Spartans. This probe aimed to uncover the extent of their activities and any potential misconduct. Next up is the Tasmanian Devils, a deputy clique operating out of the Temple City Station. Members of this group are marked by a common tattoo featuring the Warner Brothers cartoon character, the Tasmanian Devil. There's not much public information about this secretive subgroup. They get occasional mentions in press accounts and on social media from other sheriff's deputies, but details are sparse. In one capital case, a prosecution witness known only as Deputy Weston described the Vikings, another infamous sheriff gang, as simply a group of tightly knit deputies with a mascot. He compared them to other station groups with mascots like the Tasmanian Devils at Temple City Station. Despite this benign portrayal, Sheriff Baca had a different take. In a 2010 discrimination lawsuit filed by LASD Deputy Mark Moffat, Baca testified that the Tasmanian Devils were a derogatory group that formed without the department's authorization. According to Baca, the group identified themselves through their tattoos and other forms of language. Next, we have the 3000 Boys, a deputy gang based on the 3000 cell block of Men's Central Jail in downtown LA. There's some debate about whether members have a common tattoo, but there's a widely circulated photo of a man's bald head with vertical bars tattooed above the words 3000 Boys. These deputies only hung out with each other, left their posts en masse at the end of their shifts, resisted supervision, and often used excessive force against inmates. A judge visiting the 3000 block's control booth discovered walls and equipment covered in graffiti and derogatory comments, including a bumper sticker on the key box that read, "Please don't feed the animals." The 3000 Boys were known for their aggressive misconduct outside the jail as well. For instance, in 2003, a member arrested for DUI threatened a West Covina police officer, warning him not to mess with him because he was a 3000 floor deputy. On December 10th, 2010, 6 3000 Boys members assaulted 2 other custody deputies, Chris Vasquez and Elizario Perez, after a party for jail employees at the Quiet Cannon restaurant. The attack happened because Vasquez and Perez had criticized the 3000 Boys for delaying inmates' visits with their elderly family members. Vasquez and Perez filed a civil rights lawsuit claiming that the LASD was inadequate in disciplining and controlling deputies, especially concerning illegal acts and excessive force. Photos from the party showed the assailants making gang-like hand signals indicating the number 3. Next up is the 2000 Boys, a deputy gang based on the 2000 cell block of Men's Central Jail in downtown LA. Members of this gang have a common tattoo on their calf depicting the Roman numeral 2. They engaged in the same type of misconduct and gang-like activities as the 3000 Boys. To earn their tattoo, members would beat inmates and then file false reports to cover up the abuse. One custody deputy on the 2000 block even fractured an inmate's orbital bone to earn his 2 tattoo, marking his acceptance into the 2000 Boys. Interestingly, the Executioners gang was reportedly founded by a former 2000 boy named Andy Toon, who has since moved elsewhere in the department. Toon was involved in at least one fatal shooting, further cementing his notorious reputation. Next up is the Vikings, arguably the most notorious deputy gang in the LASD's history. This gang operated out of the now-closed Linwood Station during the 1980s and 1990s. Members of the Vikings had a common tattoo on their ankle depicting a Viking head, sometimes accompanied by the number 998, which is the radio code for officer-involved shooting. These deputies engaged in classic gang behaviors like throwing gang signals, using gang jargon, and even spray painting LVS25 over other street gang tags in Linwood. In 1990, over 75 minority residents of Linwood, represented by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, filed a class action civil rights suit against the LASD. They alleged that the department tolerated the Vikings' racially motivated violence against community members. According to the suit, Vikings members shot, beat, racially profiled, and illegally searched African Americans and Latinos to intimidate and terrorize the minority community near the Linwood Station. U.S. District Judge Terry Hatter, in granting a preliminary injunction, described the Vikings as a white supremacist gang operating under leaders who tacitly authorized deputies' unconstitutional behavior. A divided panel of the Ninth Circuit later reversed and remanded the case because Judge Hatter granted the preliminary injunction without holding an evidentiary hearing on disputed facts. Eventually, the county settled with the minority plaintiffs for $9 million. Following the Vikings, we have the Wayside Whiteys, a deputy gang that allegedly operated out of Peter J. Pitchess Honor Rancho, previously known as Wayside Honor Rancho, a detention facility north of Los Angeles. It's unclear whether members of the Wayside Whiteys had a common tattoo, but some members used W hand signals to signify their affiliation. In 1990, Clydell Crawford, an African-American former inmate, sued LA County for civil rights violations, alleging that he has been beaten in custody by members of the Wayside Whiteys who deliberately broke his leg. Crawford and 3 other African-American former inmates claimed they were assaulted because of their race. The complaint described the Wayside Whiteys as a Ku Klux Klan type organization espousing white supremacy and aiming to subjugate, intimidate, and terrorize African-American inmates. Crawford's lawyer publicly suggested that the activities of the Wayside Whiteys were likely related to other white supremacist deputy groups at other county jail facilities, although he didn't provide specific details. The Internal Affairs Bureau, IAB, investigated these allegations and concluded that the group did not exist, claiming that Wayside Whiteys was a pejorative term used by African-American inmates to refer to some white custody deputies. Despite this conclusion, the county settled Crawford's lawsuit for $40,000. That's it for today. Until next time, bye.